Greetings, greetings. Absolutely wonderful to be in your company again. Thank you for joining me. Just going to be joined quite soon by our brother, Franklyn Jones. And today's topic for conversation is part 2 of that wonderful, wonderful show that we started last strong. And if you missed the show that we did last strong, hopefully there's going to be a bit of a recap and you'll be able to get the message again. But it's all about how we emancipate our mind, how we liberate our minds, how we liberate ourselves from mental enslavement, and how we on a daily basis are being socialized and being indoctrinated into thinking in a particular way. Hey, we have the man himself backstage. Let me bring on our brother Franklyn Jones. Welcome, welcome, brother Franklyn. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you back in the house. We're just giving the audience a short while to join us. So before you get into a verse, let me just welcome you to part 2 of our really interesting and insightful discussion that we started last strong. How are you?
I'm fine. Your audio is going in and out.
Okay, I can see Brother Franklyn. I can't hear it. Oh.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, it seems that way. The audio is definitely going in and out. I'm hearing you now, yes.
Okay,
welcome.
Testing. Welcome. It's always a pleasure, my sister.
You seem you seem.
Okay, you want me to hang up and redo it again? Maybe get a better.
Sorry, please continue.
You want me to turn off and come back again? Maybe I get a better connection.
Okay, do try that.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And we want to hear everything you've got to say. So our brother Franklyn's just going to, as you've heard, come back in again. And looking forward to today's show and to hearing from brother Franklyn again. Oh my days. I mean, the learning that we get from him is just absolutely phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So he's just going to come back in again, and I'm really looking forward to being mentally decolonialized and to have my brain decolonized by our brother Franklyn Jones. Brother Franklyn, you've been doing some amazing work. It's a privilege and an honor to have you as a guest again on the Sista Shanice show. Let's hear from you, my brother. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic, and I thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate you. I want you to know that. I'm really looking forward to today. And for those who are listening for the first time, what I do is I use my training in social engineering and psychological warfare and warfare tactics, and I show how we can apply those to our plight. And in doing so, it gives us a more of an accurate understanding of our plight than applying biblical fairy tales and slave syndrome myths. And to those who never heard me before, I know the common response would be people have a right to believe what they want to believe. However, there's an exception to this rule, and this exception exists among the oppressed. When the beliefs and ideologies held by the oppressed are falsehoods, they must be exposed and eradicated, because if our understanding is flawed, all remedies that stems from them will be flawed. So the goal here is to give our people a more accurate and true understanding of our plight and condition. And there's no such thing as different version of facts. There are only one fact. And we speak based upon the teaching, based upon the clearest facts we can find. The subject I wanted to mention today was something that people always, I keep getting emails about, letters about, and there's this common question I always hear: why do they hate Black people the most? They say, what did we do to them? What did we do to them? And we've all heard that. And I'm going to show how applying the rules of war gives us that answer. In the rule of warfare, it teaches you must take down the biggest threat, the greatest adversary. You must tarnish their image. You must dehumanize them. to justify when you kill them. You must demoralize and divide them. These are all in the doctrine now of how to do this. You demoralize and divide them to prevent them from unifying against you. You destroy their credibility so that others will not join them against you. Okay, now this is the warfare tactic that we endure. Now, because the African is the greatest threat against the system of white supremacy. Now, many people, because of how they've been socialized, they find it funny. They say, "Oh, we don't have nuclear weapons. How come we be the greatest threat?" We are the greatest threat. And if you don't believe we're the greatest threat, it's because you're not seeing the world as it truly is. You're seeing the world as the white society tells you to see the world. All threats is not necessarily a nuclear war. I'll give an example. Right now in Africa, if the African nations unified and created one currency, and under this one currency, it would weaken the Western dollars. If we took control, we'd be able to charge for our natural resources. So let's say we created a single currency backed by Africa's natural resources. That would be a powerful currency. And that powerful currency would then disrupt the Western world. And then the Western world would have to come to us for our natural resources at our prices that we set. And with a weakened euro and a weakened dollar. So that would devastate the Western world. You see? So that's a great threat. So the white society, to protect its interests, that's why they have propaganda. This is why they keep the African nations divided. This is why an African person speaks about creating the single currency, he'll be killed. We are their greatest threat because they need our resources the most. We are also their greatest threat when you study the history. Now, many people think merely because of the enslavement, where the white man used his weaponry advantages of guns and cannon to enslave and kill Africans, that says it all. But the reality is this. I'll give an example just studying the African American community. They actually study. They have think tanks and they study us. And they determined in the 1960s that the African American protest was unprecedented. African Americans are the only group in this country who, due to their protests, brought about significant change in civil rights laws. So unlike the Native Americans, unlike the Asians who were here, the other people, the rights that had been obtained came at the back of the African Americans. Okay, so African Americans protest. So Africans were seen as the greatest threat. So it is for this reason why they must marginalize our image, denigrate our image, vilify us, because by discrediting us, it's now difficult for African Americans to get the Asians to join them in a revolt against white supremacy. The Native Americans, the Latin. That's why our image is being attacked the most. And there's another reason we're being attacked the most, because to stop again, I apologize. I'll call it later, my daughter. We represent the greatest threat because the white man knows the potential of the African better than we Africans do. How is that possible? Because he controls our narratives. In America, every narrative, all narratives about Black people comes from a white source. Black people are not allowed to refute nor fact check anything. Black people are not allowed to participate in the gathering or the creating of our narratives and our statistics. That's entirely controlled by white sources. Why is this? Because the white society uses this to maintain their dominance over us. They learned that to maintain their social dominance, they have to keep us believing less of ourselves. Now, in America, many of us don't know this, but you can fact check this. Virtually every invention that revolutionized the world, or that were invented by a Black person or inspired by an invention of a black person. If you go out to your house and you see a traffic light, there'll be no traffic light with no black person. If you turn your lights on, there will be none. If you use GPS with no black person, there'll be. We don't know these narratives, but that's by design, because to maintain their social dominance over us, they have to keep us believing less about ourselves. And here's the kicker: regardless of how intelligent a person is, if it's possible to control the information that's fed into his mind, it's entirely possible to control what he believes. We are billions, and we've normalized this. We've normalized what has been done to us. The goal here is to stop our people from normalizing it. And the way to stop our people from normalizing it is making our people recognize it. Recognize that it's not normal. The fact that whether you go to London, whether you go to the Caribbean, whether you go to Chicago or Africa, you'll always run into communities where black people have a negative perception of their race. And you'll always have those black people who defends white supremacy. This is not normal. And think about it. It's so widespread. It is so widespread that we can't dismiss it as just being isolated similarities. The fact that it is so widespread is proof that it's by design. It is how the white society protects themselves from black retribution. By keeping us believing less of ourselves is how they protect themselves. There's another tactic when I was in the war, and they taught us. They said, here's how you control prisoners, POWs, for example. I'm going to show you how this relates to our condition. They teach us that the way to control a POW of war is when the prisoners protest about the conditions of the prison, we never acknowledge their protests. We never acknowledge their protests. Regardless of how much they argue, how much they protest, as the POW, we always put our narratives on them. If they say the food is bad, we don't acknowledge it. We say something else. We keep presenting counter narratives, never acknowledge. This is the same thing what happens to Africans when we protest white oppression. It's the same science. Something else that we do with POWs. We study them and we look for the leaders and we describe them as agitators. And then we delete those agitators from the POWs. And we isolate them. This is the same thing what happens in African communities when they kill our leaders or throw them in jail. They're defined as agitators, and you separate them from them. You see the science between POWs treatment and how we Africans are treated. It's one and the same. It's one and the same. And the similarities are too great for us not to recognize that there is a science. The goal on this program is to elevate our people's minds, elevate to liberate. If our people, upon hearing these programming, stop looking at their Bibles to save them, or stop studying the wilderness to save them, and start elevating their minds and start seeking out to understand the social science, this is how we'll be liberated. This is how we'll be liberated. And there's something else you're going to notice from this information I share. The difference between fake knowledge and true knowledge is this. Fake knowledge shapes your mind in a way that benefits the oppressor. It further mentally enslaves you. True knowledge shapes your mind in ways that is at a disadvantage to the oppressors. And it elevates your mind to a point that once it's elevated to a greater size, it never returns to its original size. You can't become re-ignorant once you see the truth. That's the difference you will see. When you talk about, for example, fake knowledge, the Bible, the religion of the Bible makes you passive. It makes you sit there waiting on Jesus to save you. This benefits your oppressors. The story of Willie Lynch, it makes you believe that we're separate from something that's from the past. But so our minds are never focused towards our oppressors. True knowledge, focus your mind directly at the enemy. Directly at the enemy. I say this to people, when we have so many Black people are self-hating and divided, and they keep asking, why are we so divided and self-hating? I say, ask yourself the question, who controls what Black people believes about themselves, and who benefits when Black people are self-hating and divided? It's the same people. And the answer's right in your face. Whites benefit when we are self-hating and divided, and white people control what we believe about ourselves. This is the goal here is to make our people think, because we think we're thinking. There's this thing called thinking without thinking. It's where people are all given the same information and they develop a herd mentality. And in this herd mentality, they cling to the misinformation. They defend the misinformation. And they don't critically think. And in fact, if you're a Black person that's not a critical thinker, the chances are they've already mentally enslaved you. They control us through psychological warfare, as the brother just said. If someone's talking to you about liberation and he's not talking to you about psychological warfare, socializing, he's not talking to you about these subjects, walk away from him. He's not intelligent. He's not awoke. There's a science that is used for maintaining dominance, and we must learn the science. Like I said, every field has a science. Every field. I mean, if you ask the best chef, there's a science to cooking. There's a science to being a great DJ. There's a science to designing a nightclub. There's a science to building a hotel. There's a science behind everything. But the thing is, we never hear about the science behind maintaining dominance and the science behind long-term oppression of a people. Okay? Let us look, for example, the science behind, although they connect one and the same, but the science behind maintaining dominance over a people. People don't naturally accept the dominance of other groups over their lives. They do not. Their minds have to be conditioned to accept dominance of another group, especially when that group has brutally mistreated them for a long time. So the way you maintain this dominance is you continue to feed into the minds of the oppressed positive information about the oppressors. And all information about the oppressed are negative. All information about the oppressors are positive. And what this does, this instills a value system into the minds of the oppressed that makes them not only more compliant with white dominance over their lives, and in many cases makes them prefer it. All you have to do is keep giving someone positive information about one group and negative information about the other group. And what is this? There's a term where it says, people are like computers. All you have to do is keep giving them certain information every so often, and you can persuade an entire generation towards an applied objective. This is what's happening to us. And we're infested, it's all around us. And it's frustrating when you know the truth. Now, that method of maintaining dominance is necessary also because whenever, this is every human being, this is an inherent part of the human condition. Whenever human beings are oppressed for a long time, whenever, their collective aggressions toward their oppressors start to swell and start to grow. And this always results in massive rebellion and retribution. And what you must do, you must do something with that aggression. That aggression is energy. That aggression is pumping. You can't just put a hammer on top. You can't just put a weight on top of that. You have to do something with that aggression. All humans, when suffering a long time, develop aggression towards their oppressors. So what do you do with it? You can't just put a hammer on it. People will fight, fight, fight. That's what they discovered in the past. So what they decided, they realized to do, they had to shift our aggressions away from the white society and redirect it against us. You see, that's how you control the people. If they just kept putting their foot on us, they recognize that doesn't work after a while. This is why wherever you go where whites dominate, you're always going to hear information that misleads the oppressed to believe that it is ourselves that are our worst enemies. And you'll have blacks who will tell you that. Blacks will tell you things like, and here's this, it's amazing how they have this thing working. I'll give an example. You will hear black people says, a white man never hit me, but a black man has hit me. A white man never did. And what happened is they don't understand how their minds have been programmed, because every race has greater conflicts among their own people. Every race has crime committed by their own people than other race. Every race are killed more by their own than any other people. The reason why there's a name for this, it's called I'll come back to me, but it exists because these are the people we marry among. These are the people we borrow money from. These are the people we lend money to. These are the people we cheat with. We are among our own. All races do this. But here's the deal. Once you've been bombarded of people to believe that they're the worst, they see those things among their communities that are typical among other communities, but they see it as a validation that they're the worst. That's why it's so hard to convince them. No, we're not the worst. We're not the worst. Because once you've been, like I told you last time, once you've been brainwashed to see something, you only see those things that appears to confirm the programming. So you see, I hate not to curse, but I always describe this as a mind fuck. How they have our minds imprisoned. So when we see negative things about our community, we think we're the worst. And you remember Franz Fanon say, the oppressed will always believe the fraudulent worst about themselves. But the reality is this: Black people are more loving than any other race, but we believe we're the most hating. They've turned our minds around. We are the most inventive, but we believe there's many of us believe that we just sitting back do nothing. Now, there's something that we can all agree on. Listen, we all agree on this. I'm gonna say this. We agree. We admit that there are millions of Black people who are walking around thinking exactly as their oppressors wants them to. We agree with this. But here is something we must know. It is never a coincidence whenever the oppressed thinks exactly as their oppressors want them to. It's never a coincidence. It's always by deliberate design. It's called socialized. We are being socialized to think and behave in ways that benefit whites. Even when we're watching movies, from the time we're young, we go to the movies and we're seeing these white heroes and we smile. We like them. We see them saving the world or saving the Black child. And we're being conditioned while watching the movies to love them, to revere them. So we don't see them based upon the reality. We see them the way we are being programmed to see them. And there's this thing that happens when you're watching the movies. It's called an alpha state. This is how they program us in movies. In fact, the U.S. government has put billions of dollars in the Pentagon has spent billions of dollars into movies. And people don't understand how powerful it is. Now, before I go into the science behind the movie, I want to show you in our lifetime how the movie works, how they use movies. But 10 years ago, we had the situation about blood diamonds. And Africans around the world and non-Africans started boycotting the blood diamond industry. And people were saying, I'm only going to buy these diamonds if they're not blood diamonds. You remember the story? We've all had it. And you would see rappers on red carpets. Oh, wow. Okay, stop. I'll come back to what someone just said. I'll come back to what I was saying about the blood diamond. Someone just said a question of why are Black people so easily swayed? I want to tell you something. I know sometimes it's easier for to believe, why are we so gullible? Why are we so swayed? But here's the reality. They start socializing our minds from the time we are very young in school, before our critical thinking skill has formed. From the age of 5 years old, we start receiving information within our school systems where we are being conditioned to revere whites, to respect whites, to love whites. And we're being taught that white people invented everything. And for the most part, black children are taught that we are inventors of peanut butter. It's a backhand insult. So when we say, why are we so gullible? We must remember, when you have a black child who goes to school from the age of 5 to the age of 18 for 8 hours a day, being indoctrinated with the ideology of his oppressors, it slowly consumes him. By the time he's an adult, he's already fully socialized, and now he's only being now reinforced socialized through media propaganda. But his true core socializing began during his education. The reason why, back to talking education, you asked about the mindset, this also the reason why we are giving such a little racially affirming facts about ourselves. We all agree that within our schools, white students are being given an elevated version of their histories, and black students are given a marginalized version of their history. This is the part of the socializing of our minds, because in order for a dominant society to maintain their dominance over the oppressed, they must condition the oppressed to accept a subordinate status within the society. And how was this achieved? It is achieved by denying the oppressed of a racially affirming curriculum. When the oppressed is given a curriculum that exalts his oppressors and marginalizes him, this psychologically conditions the oppressed to accept a subordinate status within the society. So when we say, why are black people so gullible, you have to see how this starts when we're really young. And our parents didn't know. It's like the old system of racism where you could tell a black person, don't go across the track. You go across the track, those men gonna lynch you. And a black man knew, don't go across the track. A child knew, don't go across the track to avoid racism. But the system of racism today is so much more sophisticated that you can compare. The old system had a GED. GED in America, that's the General Education Diploma. And this modern system has a PhD. It is far more sophisticated. It is not easily recognized or comprehended by its black victims. Therefore, it is more proficient. White racism always works best when the black victims no longer recognizes it. Okay. Now, before I answer that response, I was going into, what was the subject I was going to before I answer that response? Well, I'll come back to that. Yes, it would actually have been a note when I read what she said. But we are being socialized, and if you think socialized is a conspiracy theory or some feeble-minded fairy tale, this is a true science. But they don't teach us this. All nations socialize their oppressed. All white nations socialize their oppressed. They all do. But the socializing is not, they will never teach us this, because the oppressors will never give us information and education that truly liberates our minds. Now, as a comment about Jesus, the two biggest black countries have two biggest white Jesus. True. The religion, I say religion is one of the greatest brainwashing effects upon black people. Between that and now media manipulation. It's amazing when you think about the fact. Just think that right now, I'm asking the listeners, I want you to imagine at this very moment, work with me, please. Right when you're sitting at your home, right where you're sitting there right now, I want you to imagine that 5 men kicked your door in, walked into your house, and those 5 men raped your daughters, killed your sons, steal all of the wealth from your home, and then give you a Bible they wrote and say, these are the words of God. Think about that. That is the reality that our ancestors face. When we argue defending the Bible today, we are literally defending something that our ancestors fought to resist. I want you to imagine this. Your ancestors being whipped so bad to accept Jesus, and the white man says to him, I'm going to whip your ass so bad that your great-great-grandchildren will be insisting that Jesus is real. This is the reality. They said, I am going to beat Jesus so much into you that your great-grandchildren will be insisting he's real, and we're doing that. There are so many, I'm going to show you something. There are so many flaws within the Christian religion that if those flaws were a hole in a boat, you can never take the boat out to sea because it would sink to the bottom. Yet people live their entire lives defending on this. But to do so, you have to not be a critical thinker. I'm going to show you something. The person in charge of writing the Bible was a man named, not King James, it was Constantine, Emperor Constantine in 325 AD. He and the Council of Bishops came together. Now, I want you to know, here's a fact. The Romans who wrote the Bible routinely engaged in bestiality, sodomy, homosexuality, incest, and death sports. And they continued this practice even after they wrote the Bible. This fact alone disqualifies the Bible from being the Word of God. Again, the fact that the Bible strongly condones slavery, this fact strongly disqualifies the Bible from being the works of God. Now, there's something else. The man, Emperor Constantine, who was the overseer of the creating of the Bible, the man who was in charge, who put the story of Jesus in the Bible, that very man, on his deathbed, he refused to convert to a Christian. On his deathbed, he refused to accept the Jesus that he put into the Bible. Now, come on, people, we have to use common sense. If the person in charge of the Bible refused to convert to a Christian, that clearly shows it's not the Word of God. Also, if the Bible truly contained the empowering words of God, it would have been kept as far away from our ancestors instead of being brutally forced upon them as it was. Now, someone just said it's a mental illness that our people are suffering from. I'm trying to explain this in the best way. At a certain age, we develop our critical thinking skills. Okay? Now, so often information that has been embedded into our minds before our critical thinking skills were developed, that information is grandfathered in. It's inside. And it's there. So then that's what we have. We have these people who believe in these ridiculous things. And when you say something to them about it, they get angry at you. They want to fight you for presenting fact, presenting intelligence. And the reason for this is because the person who's presenting the facts is using critical thinking, common sense, and reasoning. But the Christian has been conditioned to ignore all evidence contrary of his faith and stand by blind faith. It sounds admirable. I'm going to stand by blind faith and wait on my Jesus. It sounds admirable. But in reality, it dumbs down the mind. It imprisons the mind. False knowledge always imprisons the mind, and here's why. A man who is ignorant may seek knowledge, continue to seek knowledge, but a person who believes he has true knowledge stops searching. So the Christian believing that the Bible is true knowledge, he stops searching, and he stays right there. He stays right there. His mind is now in a state of arrested development. And he doesn't see, let's call it what it is, how stupid it really is to try to liberate yourself based on a Bible that was brutally forced upon you by your enslavers. You know, and then people create these lies to justify holding on to the Bible. And they push these lies. And the lie was this, that Christianity was originally the teaching of Africans. We had it first. It was our religion in Ethiopia. That is an absolute lie. Christianity did not come to Ethiopia until 16 years after the Romans wrote it, and the Romans forced it onto the Ethiopians. So that's a lie. You see, the world has become so ignorant and so lost that telling the truth pisses people off. And they don't care if you're speaking facts. They're angry at you for speaking truth. But to liberate ourselves, we have to free ourselves from the white man's mental enslaving lies. You know, they say how? This we're buried under 500 years of lies. We are the people that we're waiting for. And we have the capability to liberate ourselves. How do I know this? If we didn't have the capability, the white man would have spent billions of dollars manipulating us every day. If it was that simple, he wouldn't put his billions of dollars into manipulating our minds. He wouldn't have spent so much billions of dollars into spreading propaganda into our community that is designed to keep us divided and confusing. That's how you know. I have complete belief in Black people's ability, or any people's ability, to rise above any given situation when they're shown how it's being done. How it's being done. The history we're taught is a lie that falsely exalts whites. The Bible is a control system. The media is a manipulating system. Our governments are corporations. We have to understand that education is indoctrination. That's how we're being controlled. That's how they're being controlled. Yes, brother's talking about Constantine. Yes, on his deathbed, my brother, he refused to convert. I have the name of the bishop who then, after he died, they anointed him, baptized him, and declared him a Christian after he was dead. Now, as we know, according to the Christian doctrine, you have to accept Jesus while you're in life. You can't die and accept him. But that's what they did for Constantine, because he refused. He refused to accept Jesus Christ on his deathbed. This is the creator of it. You can research this. And it was amazing. Our ancestors passed down a lot of things to us. If a person is born ignorant, the parents who are ignorant, ignorant becomes the norm. And we walk around, they pass a lot of lies to us, misinformation to us. But here's the deal. Our ancestors were not walking around with computers in their pockets with access to unlimited information. So we are actually worse than our ancestors because we have the ability to find proper information. And we refuse to do so. We sit there hanging on to lies that our ancestors fought to resist. When we spiritually connect to our ancestors, when we have a European mindset and they have an African mindset, this creates friction between us. The more we start understanding our truth, understanding what they've been through, we establish a greater connection with our ancestors. Now, when we talk about all of the narratives that we learn today, everything that we call truth comes from our oppressors, evil people. I'm going to tell you a story of what happened here in America during slavery. During slavery, this happened on a Friday night, and there was a white Christian master and slaver, and he had 4 guests over, 3 guests, and he was telling the guests about his favorite negress that he enjoyed having sex with. Yeah, my brother, I got you. I know. I should have worn something else. This was a gift from a girlfriend a long time ago. But listen, the guy's asking why am I having this Nike logo? I understand. The girl, I'm no longer with her. But listen, this story takes place where these enslavers were discussing his favorite negress to sleep with at night. So his guest says to him, this is a true story, says to him, can we have a turn with her? So the enslaver took his guest out to the back house where she lived. She lived in a one-room shack with her 2 daughters and her husband. So the master and his drunk guest came in. They knocked the door open, and there she is in bed with her husband. They make the husband get out of bed, butt naked. He don't have time to put his clothes on. And he has to go outside and sit on the grass while the men take turn raping his wife. The black man is sitting out there, covering his ears, sitting on the damp grass in the morning cold, being humiliated and emasculated while these men are having turns with his wife. When they finish having sex with his wife, they walk out of the shed and they walk over and they're laughing. They say, you sure a lucky nigger to have a wife like that. And the black man was forced to nod and shake his head. Shake his head because he's been tortured and beaten for so long. Then when he walks into the room, he sees his traumatized daughters. He sees his wife's traumatized, smelling like sex. But he can't do nothing about it. He can't do nothing about it. He's being emasculated. And the next day when the master sees him, make sure he don't have no attitude, he starts talking to him. And the master tells him, you know, you're lucky. You're lucky I ain't been back to get your daughters yet. You see, the master had a right to sleep with anyone he wanted to sleep with. This is what the black man endured. Now, the black man's mistreatment continued. When he sees his wife's belly starting to swell, and he's having these mixed emotions. Is it my child or is it the master's child? And then when the baby's born mulatto, he's devastated again. This is what the ancestors endured. And so much more torture. So much more torture. But in spite of this history, many of us, defend whites, and we say things like, it's in the past, we should love them. But have you paid attention that whenever they're educating the Jews, whenever it's about the Jews, the narrative is never forget. Never forget. The narrative that black people receive is it's in the past, get over it. It's in the past, get over it. The reason for this contradiction is because black people are being socialized. Now, white social scientist says it would be irresponsible to give black people a type of education that makes black people become resentful towards the dominant society. Now, watch this. From their position, they're doing what's best for them. The education we're taught is designed to be best for them. These are the people who controls all information. These people control how we see Africa here in the West. It controls how Africans sees African Americans. And many Africans come to this country have a disdain for African Americans. As I see African Americans, some have a disdain for Africans. And I say to both parties, if you've never been to Africa, how is it you have such a disdain for Africans? I said, don't you realize that your interpretation of Africa is controlled by whites? And I say to the African American, I say you are saying that they all hate us and you have a disdain for them. I said, how many Native Africans have you ever sat down and talked to? None. I've never wanted to. It's because they don't realize that our minds are being programmed when we don't even realize it. Our minds are being programmed when we're watching movies, when we're educating. I'll give you back to the movie Blood Diamonds. There was a scene in the movie Blood Diamonds where the co-star, black man, looks into the screen and he says, he gives a dialogue. And in the dialogue, he says, we were better when the white man was taking care of us. He says, since the white man has left us for independence, Africa is far worse. And that narrative was being spread into our society. I began to wonder, am I frozen? Can someone send me a message, let me know I'm still on? I'm seeing something on the screen. If you're hearing me, send me a message, please. If you're hearing me, send me a message, please. I'm not sure I'm still on. I think I've lost connection. I'll continue on, however. The white man often embeds his propaganda into our movies, into things we don't realize what is happening to us. And all of a sudden you're walking around, and all of a sudden you have this adoration for whites and negative view for us blacks. Great. Clothes should come together, hold hands.
My sincere apologies. My internet connection threw me out, but I'm back, and please do continue. My sincere apologies.
No
I've got a weak internet connection.
Well, at all. The break.
And if it happens again, just continue. Just continue without me, my brother.
But when you're, others hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, great. Okay. I remembered where I was going with the Blood Diamonds. I wanted to show how so often what we think are just entertainment, there are messages embedded within the entertainment. Messages that socially engineers societal perceptions. And our problem is, so many of us are ignorant of this fact, where that's why we have rappers who contribute to the denigrating of their race. Their ignorance has been exploited by the white propagandists. So you would see these rappers doing videos with degrading black women and propagating pimps and crime and criminal. But they don't understand how these images are weapons. These media images shape opinions, and they don't understand their ignorance has been exploited by white oppressive forces. If we knew, we would not allow ourselves to be portrayed in such a way where we are denigrating our own people. Okay? Now, like I was saying, there's a scene in Blood Diamonds where the star, the co-star, the brother, I can't remember his name, I can never pronounce it, I apologize. The brother looks into the camera and he says, we were better when the white man was controlling us. We were better off when the white man was controlling us. And when you watch that in the movie, there was no counter narrative. There was no counter narrative, And here's the trick they do. Sometimes they would present a counter narrative, but the point that the counter narrative is less significant. It's small. This is trying to give the appearance that there was a balance there, But their narrative is always the stronger one. But in the movie Blood Diamonds, it said we were better off when the white man was over here. When the white man left, we are worse than our worst enemies. And the African is sent into the screen. Now, here's how that movie benefited the Blood Diamond industry. When the story of the Blood Diamond industry was being spread around the world, everyone was talking about it. We were talking about it from a position of Africans being mistreated, exploited for white greed. That was the narrative. Black children losing their hands, losing their body, being maimed for white greed. But if you watch the movie shifted the aggressions away from the Western society and shifted against Africans. You see the movie? Have you seen the movie Blood Diamonds? In the movie.
No, I didn't. No, I haven't seen the movie.
Yes, okay. In the movies, the villains are the Africans. The evil ones are the. And the movie ends with the African man now going before a committee of white people to inform them about how Africans are killing each other over the diamonds. In the movie, the white man didn't know. We were shocked. And the movie ends like that. The movie ends with the Africans saying the Africans are killing us. You see how the movie shifted out against ourselves? Recently, they also made a movie called Harriet Tubman. In the movie, we all know the story of Harriet Tubman running, taking slaves and freeing them to the north. In the movie, they created a character, an evil character who is black. And he is hired to go and chase after Harriet Tubman. And the prize he wants is a white woman. He's a totally fictional character. But so you see where our narratives are being poisoned, where we are always our worst enemies. Now, like I said, some of people don't understand how real this is. Are you familiar with Danny Glover, the actor Danny Glover? Danny Glover was a famous actor back in the 90s, 80s. He's a producer, director now. I used to be with Don Cheadle. You know Don Cheadle? I guess you don't mean American actors. I'm sorry. Okay. But it's fine. But here's the deal. Don Cheadle and Danny Glover were producing and directing a movie about the Toussaint Louverture, about the Haitian African revolt against the French. So they took their contracts to white producers in the States, and the white producer said, no, the only way we will finance this movie is you create fictional white heroes to assist the Africans. So they said no. So Danny Glover then went to France, asking to see if he can find someone to produce the film, looking for finance. He told him he had two great names. He had Angela Bassett as Toussaint's wife and Don Cheadle as Toussaint Louverture, two top great actors signed on. The white producer says, if you're not going to add white actors in there, fictional white heroes, we will not support it. Now, this is a point to let you know how our stories is always being controlled by whites, always being censored by whites. So when we see our people who are so loving of whites, we have to understand how it is happening, why it's happening. And the only way to fight this system is by educating our people. The more we educate our people, the weaker the system becomes. The more when you're watching movies, you see the propaganda. You understand the message. One of the greatest white propaganda in recent time was the Black Panther movie. Certainly they knew that the movie would be seen by billions of people around the world and spread all over Africa. But if you watch the movie and you pay close attention, you would see that an ideology that serves and protects white supremacy was embedded into the movie and was downloaded into our minds while watching it. Before I share that ideology with you, I'm going to tell you how it's downloaded into our minds. When you're watching a movie, it's not like when you're in a debate. It's not when you're in a conversation. I'm reading these things with Cleopatra. Okay, I'm going to come back to that. Cleopatra. Remember that, Cleopatra. Yes, I'm going to talk about that in a second. That's a great one. Okay, when you're watching movies, it's not like when you're in a debate or a conversation where you're saying, I agree with this or I don't agree with that, as in a debate. When you're watching a movie, your mind becomes what they call an alpha state. You're just relaxing and receiving information. This allows information to be downloaded into your subconscious mind without you processing it as you would in a debate or a conversation. You're just watching it as being downloaded into you. Okay? Now, this same system happened when we were watching Black Panther, a pro-African movie. Even when the movie is a pro-African movie, even when the stars are mostly black, when a white man's controlling it, his propaganda is embedded within it. Now, if you pay attention, the African American who was seeking liberation, he was vilified. He embodied negative. He embodied the criminal. And they even had him kill a black woman to further turn you against his narrative. But his narrative was the one what a healthy African mind would embrace. He wanted to go around and free our people from oppression. And there's a unique scene in the movie that I watched in the theater with a bunch of black people, okay? A full theater of black people. Now, there was a scene where Killmonger sends out these aircrafts to go to take weapons to Africans around the world to fight. Have you seen the film? Have you seen the film? Oh, well, I'm sorry.
I haven't, but maybe people in the audience have. I don't watch many movies. I saw the Black Panther though.
Okay, hold on. Okay, I'm talking for the audience. I'm sorry. I thought you're not a big movie buff. I'm sorry. Okay, well, in the film.
And then, yeah.
Okay, well, it's fine. In the film, a CIA agent, a white agent, shoots down the aircraft that's going out to take weapons to Africans around the world. And when he shoots down the aircraft, all the Africans in the theater start cheering him on, not recognizing that they're literally cheering against their own interests. Because the villain was about the man trying to liberate Black people. You see? So an ideology that benefits white supremacy is being downloaded into our minds. Now, the brother mentioned Cleopatra. Like I said, once you start studying these sciences, everything starts to make sense. You put together, you fully understand it. People say, why do Europeans always portray the ancient Egyptians as Europeans? And sometimes we get into a debate with them, or we are pushing, we're trying to fight against the narrative. But I believe if we understand what's really being done, it empowers us and it allows us to put our energies more into pushing our counter narrative in a productive way rather than feeling frustrated. Okay? The reason why they make the Europeans, make ancient Egyptians appear to be Europeans, doing so benefits white supremacy. How so? How so? I'm going to explain how so. According to social science, a people's future is predestined by the past they're taught to believe about themselves. Because people reference their future capabilities based upon their past achievement. Therefore, according to the theory, an inspiring past is necessary to achieve an inspiring future. So the white man started the past to give himself, his people, an inspiring future. You couldn't tell your people that you come from Neanderthals in a cave in Europe and inspire them. If Europeans knew their true narratives, that boasted false self-esteem that's been instilled into them would deteriorate. That boastful self-esteem has been embedded within them to inspire their future. Inspire their future because they're not a superior race. They're an inferior race who their gift is the ability to mass manipulate and exploit. And they use those two tools to create the illusion of their superiority and to garnish their wealth and power, exploitation and mass manipulation. So the portraying, now here are the facts about the Egyptians. Facts, absolute facts. There's no such thing as alternative facts. Once you start learning facts, nothing they say affects you. Here are the facts. This ancient city of Egypt was built thousands of years before the first non-African entered Africa. The Greeks and the Arabs arrived into Egypt during the 7th century. By that time, Egypt was thousands of years old. So it's impossible to say that white people build the pyramids. It's impossible. But see, the white man doesn't care about facts. Like I told you this is why he keeps pushing his narrative. This is why there's a new movie coming out where they're casting the woman, Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman, to play the new Cleopatra. And the reason this is being done, and people understand, it's being done because they want to keep the narrative going that, okay, I'm going to give an example of how power works. Okay, hold on. To keep the narrative going that they are Europeans. And people function based upon a narrative. White people walk around the world feeling arrogant. They don't know the true history. They've used the Africans' achievements and put it on their backs. But here are the facts. DNA analysis on the Egyptians found they were Africans. Africans, sub-Saharan Africans. They performed it on in 2012, 2013. They performed it on Tutankhamun, Ramses III, Ramses IV, and several other Egyptian mummies, and came up African. Now, if that story, those facts was the opposite, you would hear it all over the place, but you don't. The white society is falsely scripted to perpetrate white superiority intellectually, biologically, ethically, and morally. And then distort many facts to maintain this illusion. Those who do not critically think, those who don't research facts, become mentally enslaved by the white man. Everything I'm saying are facts. Now, here's power of narratives. So now, watch this. Let me show you how powerful narratives are. Okay, if you study the history of the Jews who now occupy Israel came there after World War II from Germany. They are in no way connected to the Jews of the Bible. Now, before I say the Jews of the Bible is a work of fiction. When I'm talking ancient Jews, the Jews, when they created that story, they created a whole work of fiction. There is no evidence of Jews ever being in Egypt. No Jews ever being a slave in Egypt. No one ever named Moses. Okay, when the Europeans created the story that they're the Jews, God chosen people. Now, what God describes the chosen people? That's not even the way God speaks. That shows Europeans' mindset all over that narrative. They created a narrative that they're the Jews, and they built institutions based upon that, schools based upon that, and they go through life using that narrative. They're empowered by that narrative. They're unified by that narrative. This is an example of how they say truth doesn't matter. The prevailing narrative matters. Truth doesn't matter. The white man sits upon a throne of lies. He sits upon a throne of lies, but he doesn't give a damn that they're lies, because he says true power lies in what's perceived as true. The white man's power is the ability to create false self-serving narratives that benefits himself, serves himself, and then impose them upon people and have people act accordingly to those false narratives as if they're true. It's a science that we have to understand how this works. I mean, let's use the term of money. Let's say you have a machine in your house, and every time you have a bill, you just reach this machine and plug the money you want, plug the money you want, plug the money you want. That's how the white man does narrative. It's not based upon facts. He pulls out narratives that benefits him, that serves him, and he imposes these self-serving narratives onto our society. This is how we have to understand. This is why everything you hear about whites are positive. Everything you hear about blacks are negative. Critically think. Can you not see how unrealistic that truly is? Can you not see how unrealistic it is that we're always hearing studies that compares blacks to whites, and these studies always favors whites? Think. Do you not see how unrealistic it is to have studies results constantly favoring one group over the other actually is? Think about it. Think. It makes no goddamn sense. What's happening, but there's a purpose behind it. There's a science behind it. What it does, it instills the myth of white superiority in the subconscious minds of black people. And we function based upon these narratives that whites might be inherently smarter. Now, why it's so important that we understand this? Because when all people think that the problem is Willie Lynch, it doesn't elevate our minds. It doesn't free us. It handicaps us. Excuse me. When people are made to believe that their core problem is themselves, that's a form of psychological suicide. Psychological suicide. And we're so ignorant, we don't understand it. When we start spreading narrative that we're suffering from a slave syndrome, and we don't realize that in our ignorance, we have become agents of the system of white supremacy, and we're spreading a narrative that is designed to be psychological suicide to our minds, because it conditions us to believe that something's inherently wrong with us. This makes us hopeless. This makes us An army that goes to war believing that there's something inherently wrong with their troops will win no battles because they've been programmed to believe there's something wrong with them. See, I like what the brother's saying here. The brother's true. Western media, mind control, manufactured consent. The brother's absolutely correct about that. Manufactured consent is one of the white man's favorite tools he uses, one of his favorite tools. And it's ingenious, evilly ingenious. I'll give an example of how he goes to Africa, what he does. I live across from you, Shanice, and I want to go in your house, break in your house, and steal your stuff. There are lots of people outside, out in the yard looking. So I create the narrative that you're in distress, you're struggling, and I'm running into your house to save you and rescue you while I'm doing harm to you. This is how the white man does. He used propaganda to create the illusion that his interest is in Africa is to help Africans. It's because Africans can't govern themselves. But he's truly in Africa to protect his own interests. And we have many ignorant whites in this country who says, we need to leave Africa. Man, hell with Africa. Why we spend all that damn time in Africa? We don't need Africans. We're spending money on these Africans, but they don't understand the reality is the West need Africa to exist. It needs Africa resources to continue. And the reality is this, we don't realize if Africa unified and stopped giving resources to the white man, they will declare war against Africa under national interests. They have this blanket statement under national interests. If the African step is being done to against the interests of the West, they come after you. And that's why what they do is they go after one at a time. If Africans could secretly start unifying and developing a system, but it has to be kept from the West, because the West will send infiltrators inside of it to undermine it, to take down the leaders of it. And they justify it under national interest. There's a saying, I hate it because it refers to the Bible. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And I hate quoting it because it's in the Bible. But there is a lack of knowledge that we suffer from. But it's understandably because our oppressors controls information. There's even a term known as information warfare. Information warfare. Now, I want to give you a scenario. You have a group of people in a hole, and there are secret panels to get out. But you have the map to the panel, but you don't want them to get out. So you're producing the maps, and you keep tossing into this contained area maps that keeps them from the truth. You understand? You keep them from the truth because you're controlling the information. You're controlling the map that frees them. So you just keep throwing in false maps. You keep throwing in false map, misinformation, disinformation, misdirection. And that's the plight that we're in. The plight that we're in. Their monopoly over information is their greatest weapon. In fact, every negative narrative that comes to the West about Africa, it comes directly or indirectly from white sources. All narratives that we get about ourselves, it comes directly or indirectly from white sources. They control our interpretation of ourselves. And everything they tell us about them is good, and everything they tell us about us are bad. And we function based upon it. And it's being reapplied. So you can even see how it works. Unlike something like a Bible where you have to believe in the unseen. You have to believe in the boogeyman and the invisible man in the cloud. When you start understanding social science, or when you start understanding warfare tactics, it starts to make sense. It starts to make sense. I don't know if you have this in Great Britain. I don't know if you have this in Africa, because Africa is predominantly Black. In America, our most intimate relationships are attacked because Black men, all narratives that Black women receive about Black men come from the white man. And they keep giving black women narratives that black men don't love them, black men hate them, that black men mistreat them, and the black women keep consuming this. And then we as black men, we keep receiving information that white women will treat us better. White women treat you better. White women treat you better. And these narratives then enter our interrelationship, enter our disagreements. I hear black men and women arguing, and a black woman says to her black man, I need to find me a white man. They treat you better. I've heard white women. I heard black men says, white women are more supportive. And our people function based upon these narratives, and these narratives are not true. People do not treat people based upon race. People treat people based upon the way they were raised, history of abuse. You know, there are certain things in their culture, not your skin color. Skin color is not a factor of how you're going to treat someone. But the propaganda says this: truth doesn't matter. What only matters is what's believed as true. And they spread their misinformation against us because they benefit from the results. When we say, the brothers just said about, I think that some of us have become comfortable with our inferior complex. I understand that narrative, but I would like to say something. We've actually normalized our condition. We've normalized it. And so I can understand why we say comfortable, but it may appear to be comfortable. But what it is because we've normalized it, we no longer see it. We normalize it, so we function based upon it. I went into schools, for example, high schools, and I was talking to black children in the school. And when I start telling them about black inventors, black students in the 11th grade are saying to me, man, you know us niggas don't build rockets. You know us niggas don't do that. Here it is, a black child in the 11th grade is believing the negative about himself, and he's normalized it. Now, when you say we're comfortable with inferior complex, no matter, to say that the black man is his inferior complex is like breaking a man's leg, watching him limp, and then blaming him for limping. The black man who appears to be comfortable with his inferior complex, his mind has been socialized to accept a subordinate status within society, just like Carter G. Woodson said. Now, remember Carter G. Woodson said, when you condition a man to believe less of himself, he'll automatically go to the back of the room? If the man keeps going to the back of the room, it will be immoral to just say he's comfortable in the back of the room. He's comfortable, that's why he's in the back of the room. But you have to recognize how his mind has been socialized. Socialized, again, is when the subordinate population has been conditioned to behave and think in ways that are beneficial to the dominant culture. There are two ways to effectively socialize the human mind: by what we're taught, by what we see, and by what we hear. Because the white man controls the education we're taught, he controls the media images we see, and he controls the societal narratives we hear. This allows him to socialize our minds without even realizing it. Let me give you an example. You go to an all-black school, you live in an all-black community. You don't interact with white people a lot, okay? But your interaction with white people have been in movies. You always see white people in movies, the heroes. Now you're about 11, 12 years old, and now you see a white person coming to your community. You automatically smile at them. You automatically admire them. You automatically like them. But you don't understand why you automatically like them. Because we were the ones knows who really are brainwashed. No work. We must wake up from the false national consciousness, start pretending we are free to admit are still enslaved. Let me read this again. Interesting. When one knows who they really are, their brainwash no longer works. We must wake up. I'm going to say something to that. I know, and I've heard people try to put a band-aid on our brainwashing state. Once you know the truth, you awake. Once you know the truth, you awake. And I wish it was that simple. As I said, that there are warfare tactics, right? And when you apply warfare tactics, it helps you to better understand our condition. In warfare, it teaches you to defeat an enemy, you must study his tactics. This is a generally known, even if you have a basketball team and you're going to play the other basketball team, you study their moves. Football team, study their moves. If you're a boxer going to fight another boxer, you have to study his tactics. Study if he's a left-handed, you study him in order to overcome him. So the only way to overcome this brainwashing system is to thoroughly study it and learn how it works. The white man has think tanks, and he thoroughly studies us. And then he takes that information, and they develop propaganda tactics which best influence us to behave in ways that serve their interests. They put time and energy into doing that. To liberate ourselves, we have to put the time and energy into understanding tactics, study their nefarious natures, and then develop our counter strategies against them. When we simply says, if you think differently, it's over. No. If you know who you are, it's over. No. You have to understand how the system is being applied to stop it. That's the only way. If you have a fenced-in backyard and someone has a hole in the yard and he's putting pollutants in your yard. Now, if you said, I'm going to ignore the pollutants he's putting in my yard, it's going to stop. It doesn't stop. You have to walk to the fence, find a hole where he's putting in the pollutants, and block that hole. You have to take a proactive stop to save your mind. It isn't just, he think he's woke, you think he's woke. No. When I speak, I don't speak from a position of arrogance. Arrogance is from a small-minded person. I speak from a position of love for my people. I don't speak to say that I am the smartest knife in the drawer, but I study over and over what I believe for years before I speak. I study to learn falsehoods. And after studying learning the falsehoods, I formulate truth. I find the strongest inference leads toward the truth and build a truth built upon information, knowledge, education, not built upon what the white man tells us. The art of war, the brothers dead on point. The brother just talked about it. That's where I was quoting from when I said that. In the art of war, it says to defeat the enemy, you must study the enemy's tactics. You must study the enemy tactics. Like I said, when we take this approach that we're taking here, where we're speaking in a sense where we're using, we're looking at it from a scientific method, from a warfare method, this is how we will liberate ourselves. While we're conversating now, notice we're not talking about myths and believing fairy tales. We're talking about a foundation. We're talking about a social science. And so we don't walk away feeling that we're cursed or inferior. We recognize that we've been tricked. We're being tricked, and the trick is being constantly reapplied. That's more empowering because we don't leave us believing that our state is connected with God. God ordains our oppression, like some people believe. Those mindset imprisons you. But what we recognize, the truth is, we are being tricked. We've been lied to, and it's been reapplied over and over and over. Think. The white man controls so much of the educational system in Africa. Why? Why? He creates this narrative that he's doing it for the betterment of Africa. Hell no. He's doing it for his interests. If you're new, listen to me. My sister and I've said it several times, but my background goes back to the military. I was trained in psychological warfare, and when I went into Iraq, I was an infantry unit, and these psychological operation unions joined us. They were called PSYOPs. And once we got on the ground, once the war was deemed won, now the PSYOPs unit comes in and they start running things. these PSYOPs units started brainwashing the people. The trick has been updated. Time goes by. I like what a brother just said. The trick has been updated. It reminded me of a statement that Malcolm X said. Malcolm X said, white racism is like a Cadillac. There's a new model every year. You know, so often when black people say there's no racism, there's no more racism, it's because in their minds, they're looking for the type of racism that their great-grandparents experienced, the racism that was popular during the 1960s or popular in the 50s. But white racism still prevails today more. It's more prevalent today than it was years ago because it's now covertly done. And because it's done and the black victims no longer recognize it, it's being done more and more often. Now, what I was saying to those who may not have heard last time, when I was in Iraq, the PSYOPs unit joined us. You know, all of a sudden they joined us, PSYOPs. Now the ground is safe. And all of a sudden they started doing their thing. First, they started putting in these big intercoms and start blowing in Western music into the city. All around the airport. And every day, every night, we're hearing Western music. When I say Western American music, okay? And nothing black. I mean, we the black soldiers were sitting out. We said, man, why they put some soul on there? But it wasn't about that. It was about to. It was designed to perpetuate that European dominance. They were playing European music, rock and roll, all through the city. Then that's when they took over the media, took over the movie, took over the magazines, the newspapers, and started spreading to them misinformation. Then, like I said, the insult to injury was when America spent all that money on these textbooks, and they shipped textbooks from America to Iraq, written by Americans. We were now indoctrinating their minds. So when I started to inquire with these psychological operation officers, you know, because I was infantry at this time, and I said, why are we doing all this work to these people? Why are we doing so much? Now, of course, I'm seeing what's going on, but I'm just inquiring. And they say, while the American army, with our weaponry advantage, were able to win the war, win the ground war, we cannot sustain peace with the Iraqi people unless their minds have been socialized. They said, in order to maintain peace, you have to socialize their minds. You can't conquer a people and put your force on them and think it's going to be like that. You have to socialize their minds. So that's why as soon as we got in, they start bringing in the units to start socializing their minds. And like I said to you earlier, regardless of how intelligent a person might be, if you're able to control the information, you can control over generation, you can change your mindset. And here's the thing, those older people, the older Iraqi people, they didn't care that they knew what propaganda. The goal was to start programming the next generations. So the Americans didn't care that the older adults was angry about the propaganda. Americans just kept putting the propaganda, pushing the propaganda, and the new generation grows up believing the propaganda. It's, like I said, it was sad being there, sad seeing that because I'm so conscious, sad seeing it because I'm an African. But taking the information and bringing it back to my people, it benefits my people. You know, it shows that this is a real science. And the fact that I see firsthand that this is a real science, the fact that I see the books, the doctrines, I see that this is a real science, there's been billions on this, it breaks my heart when I see my people walking around with the Bible saying this is going to free us. It breaks my heart. When I see people say it's the Willie Lynch syndrome, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that my people are believing in such frivolous fairy tale myths while there's a social science that's being used against us. And what's great about it is once we learn the social science, we are immediately empowered. We are immediately empowered. We must learn the science that's being used against us. They fear us. They're protecting their dominance. Now, first of all, there is an immense, within them, they're unrelentingly committed to preserving their global white dominance. That's necessary because it allowed them access into Africa anytime they needed to. And there's also an immense fear of Black retribution due to their long history of brutally mistreating Africans globally throughout the diaspora. This immense fear of Black retribution, this commitment to maintaining white social dominance, necessitates that they deploy psychological warfare against Black people. And from their position, if they did not do this, it'd be irresponsible on their part. It would be against their own interests. It would be irresponsible as a government not to protect its nation from escalating Black dissent. You see how they rationalize it? If they did not develop psychological warfare to keep their Black populations from unifying against the white society, it would be irresponsible as a government, because the duty of the government to maintain its nation's stability by preventing Black dissent. And under the title of preventing Black dissent, they are fucking with our minds every day. That's a fact. And their commitment to maintaining white dominance means if they didn't develop psychological warfare systems that aids them in maintaining their social dominance, they would then be diametrically opposing their own self-interest. So they're doing what they're supposed to do from their evil positions. And when we walk around self-hating and bleaching our skins, perming our hair with lie, they're not going to say anything about that because they benefit when we are kept in this state. They benefit. They never discuss it. They don't talk about it in their books. They don't discuss it. They pretend they don't even see it. They've created a situation and they benefit from it. It's called benign neglect. They neglect it because they benefit when we're self-hating. There is, now, when we speak today, this is when we speak today. We speak with common sense. We're not relying on fate. We're not relying on the misbelief. We're showing simply how this works. And you're able to grasp it. You have the intelligence to grasp it. It's a science. It's like if a musician, if you go to see a magic trick and the person's doing the trick all the time and you're blown away by it. But once you, or explain what he said, knowing who you are, I like that. I'll come to that. Once you know how the trick works, it loses its effect. Now, I love what the brother said. The second one I got saying, know yourself. Now, how does this saying go? The white man has created an image of the black people that serves the white man. And he's manipulated many Black people to see themselves based upon this illusion rather than who we truly are. It is true. When we call ourselves Negroes, that was the title the white man taught us to call ourselves Negroes, just like niggers. He always creates a title, imposes it upon us. That's his greatest power. The ability to create a narrative about Black people, impose that narrative upon Black people, and then have Black people function based upon those narratives as if they're facts. Can you imagine that? Shanice, can you imagine I'm looking at you and say, hey, baby, I create a narrative that you're in love with me, that I'm the greatest man in your life, and I impose that narrative on you, and you function based upon it. How crazy that sounds, but that's what the white man does. He creates a narrative that benefits themselves, imposes it upon Black people, and we function based upon it because we have been socialized never to question the white man. Now, why? Now, people say, why are we not questioning them? Because, as I said earlier, the white man creates our narrative, and we don't have the ability to fact check or challenge anything he says. Whatever the white man says about Black people is deemed facts and final. And we're born into this system. We're born into this system. So now we've normalized it. Now we don't even challenge it. Now, well, if we get the news that tomorrow says that blacks have lower IQs than whites, and we accept it. Okay. Blacks are killing each other at the highest rate. Okay. Black bodies are sicker, are less healthy than whites. Okay. We say, okay. We say, okay. We say, okay. Now, here's something. Here's a fact also. No group can be constantly bombarded with negative narratives about themselves and not suffer some adverse effect. All groups, when constantly bombarded with negative narratives about themselves, suffer adverse effects. All groups. And now, when you put that in mind, think about what happens to us. When we go to school, we're taught that we've done very little towards building society. We're taught that we come from, in America, we're taught we come from slaves. And before slavery, it was nothing because Africans were dumb and illiterate. We did nothing. We have no written history. And today in our schools in 2021, we have children still believe that. We come from slaves, nothing more, nothing else. That's what teaches our schools. We've done nothing. And then all of our lives, when we watch television, all our narratives are negative. Everything, turn channel, negative. And you think it's not affecting us? Now, we don't talk about it. We just normalize it. And then here's what happens. When the people have been demoralized for so long, they start demoralizing each other. Like, you know, when you hear black people says, if you want to hide something from black man, put it in a book. He's been demoralized. Now he's demoralized his own people. And he doesn't realize the fact that no black person who can say blacks don't like to read can validate that based upon his own experience. That's a narrative that he learned from white people. But white people's narrative becomes the black man's way of thinking. We've been socialized to accept the white man's narrative. And when you understand this thing more in depth, you know, this is what mental slavery is. This is what mental slavery is. So often people use the term mental slavery, but they don't understand that it's real. They don't understand how it's being reapplied. You know? I got you here. Still quiet. I'm looking at you. Are you freezing? Oh, I guess she's frozen.
I am listening to you and, you know, just totally absorbed in all of your teaching and what you're saying and, you know, just capturing what you're saying as well. And there's just so much packed into what you're saying right now. So, for example, you've just said white people's narrative becomes the black man's way of thinking. Go away, fly. So the white man's narrative becomes our way of thinking. I mean, you know, you've just thrown away so many one-liners that are just so deep, and we could just go into that alone. And it's so true, because you just described for us how the fact that we're at war as a people, a war has been waged against us, and it's a war for our mind. It's a war to control our thinking, because as John Henry Clark said as well, if you control a man's thinking, you don't need to worry about his actions. And they've controlled our actions and controlled our thinking to the extent that we believe everything that they have been saying about us. So they've been saying that we're worthless, we're no good, we're weak, we're powerless, we're this. And so we believe it. We believe we're weak. We believe we're powerless. We believe, you know, that all the negative things that have been said about us. And as you said just there as well, you know, you can't keep repeating so much negativity and heaping, you know, so much false information, misinformation on a daily basis onto a group of people, and then not expect that to have some impact and some effect. And, you know, we know the way that they use statistics all the time. They turn around and say, oh, black people are more likely to suffer from COVID. We're more likely to be predisposed to this sickness and that sickness. We're more likely to be unemployed. We're less likely, you know, to have the skills and abilities to do X, Y, Z. We're more likely to fail in school. We're more likely to be. And so it justifies them criminalizing us, treating us in particular ways. And then the rest of society, as we've been to see us, you know, the way that they have designed for society to see us, and we start to act in the way, you know, through the movies that they're portraying us as drug lords and criminals and pimps and this and that, and it goes on. But we talk about how we flip the script. You know, once we begin to see, you know, the hand of the wicked at work through the media, through the education system and everything else, we've got to start flipping that script, you know. So just want to thank everybody in the chat as well for all the comments and suggestions that have been coming through there. So once we've started learning all of their tactics, as you've been saying, and studying their brainwashing, you know, and how they've been brainwashing us as a people, we've got to start flipping that script. I mean, if you was to give us, you know, a few steps you take to start flipping that script, what would those important steps be, please, my brother?
I will give you that.
Oh, I think
there's one step.
Oh, here we go.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, you're back with it. Yes.
I don't know if you're hearing me, but
yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay. Before I go into those steps, there's one more tactic I wanted to tell you, that how they control us also by also excluding certain topics. They also control by excluding certain topics. Like, for example, right here in America, as you know, we're having the trial for the George Floyd's going on right now, the death of George Floyd. You familiar with? Well, right now, we had a death a couple days ago. A young black man, 20 years old, was killed. And before that, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, another black person was killed by a police officer. So we're still having it. But here's the deal. We, in America, we're not allowed to address it the way we really should address it. What I mean by that is this. In America, we have millions of black cops. Our black cops face the same type of pressure on the job, the same pressures and threats that the white cop does. And our black cops interact with more whites because of the larger number of whites in America. But yet the number of black people killed by white cops grossly exceeds the number of white people killed by black cops. So the point here is to say it's only a problem with stress on the job as a policeman. It shows there's more to that. When the problem is particularly among Europeans, among Caucasians, there is an inherent part of the Caucasian psyche that we're never allowed to address. We're never allowed to, because we live in a society where the white man's evil behavior is codified, and when we're never given a national platform to discuss the white man's evil psyche. So we pretend there's something else, like there's stress in the work, stress, but there's a problem that exists due to the white man's psyche. But we are not allowed to talk about a white man. All narratives about the white man is positive. All narratives about black people is negative. So we're pretending around that it's something else. Even in America, when a white man goes shooting into the malls, they always said he was stressed at work. There's always some narrative to justify him. In America, the group that murders a family member at highest rate are Caucasians. The group that can perform acts of matricide and patricide, which is death of a parent, are also Caucasians. Most violent crimes in America are committed by white men. But these narratives are never discussed. We are in a society where we are always supposed to, all narratives about whites are speaking is positive. So when we want to address the routine killings of whites by black people by white officers, we're not allowed to talk about it. Because that same reason we have more cops are killed by white men in America also. There's a narrative about their nature that we're never allowed to discuss. Okay, now, what you said about empowering ourselves, learning. What I say to our, let's start with those talking about children. A lot of African Americans are starting homeschools. And in their homeschoolings, they're teaching their children the racially affirming facts that have been withheld from them during education development. because they've learned that the reason why the racially affirming facts has been withheld from Black students is to condition them to accept a subordinate status. So now Black parents are going out and learning Black positive information and teaching to their children. Now, those who are not able to do homeschooling, what they do is they find additional curriculum. And when their children come home from school, they insist that the children read this information. Weekends, they take their kids to museums, and they're self-educating their children against the misinformation that they're receiving in their schools. When they watch television, they talk to their children about social engineering. That when you're seeing in America, Black television writers makes up only 4.3% of television writers. 4.3%. That means when you see a Black person on a television show, over 90% of the time, that's a Black person performing based upon a white director and a white writer's script. So a Black person on television is no different than a white man with a Black puppet. So we teach our children that because so often people imitate how they see themselves depicted in the media. People become those derogatory media depictions of themselves that they accept as being their reality. It's called media social engineering. So you teach your children that when you're seeing a behavior in the media being demonstrated by a Black person, that's not a Black person's behavior. That's an actor being paid by whites to act in a certain way. So when you teach the Black person this, it prevents him from becoming those caricatures that the white man makes of him. Most importantly, you teach the affirming facts about your people, and you keep teaching it to them. And that's how, because we don't own institutions like most of us don't own our own schools, so we have to do this organically. Teach. There are so many Afrocentric groups. When we Afrocentric groups come together, we should make it a habit to teach our people about social engineering and provide them the Black affirming information that's been withheld from them. Teach them to never, ever judge their people based upon narratives from their enemies. Never. Make them let go up people. Let them go up people. Interesting. Make them let go. Okay, well, I think the person's trying to say, and I think I'm adding that, make them let go the mindset the white man has given them so they would elevate. And I guess that's the best way of saying it. They elevate by learning the truth. As it says, this system relies on Black people being ignorant about how it works. So that directly means that the way to counter it is by educating Black people of how it works, because once Black people understand it, it loses its effect. For it to remain in effect, Black people have to remain ignorant. So we fight it by teaching our people. Okay, so because the so-called Black cops are in false national consciousness and they do not know who they really are, so they serve their open enemies, thinking they're a part of the so-called nation. I would say there's some truth to that, but I will have to say this also. When I joined the military as a young man, there were certain groups that said, "Well, how dare you as a Black man join the military?" But at the time, I knew I joined because I was raised by a single mother in the ghettos. So I was joining the military got me out of the ghettos. It paid for my college. I used it. So because I remember what got me into the institution of the military, I'm sort of mindful of that, and I'm cautious when I see a Black police officer because I don't know what brought him into the institution. You know, had I not joined the military, I would never learn about psychological warfare. Probably wouldn't have not. But sometimes our economic situation takes us in certain directions. So I don't like to just make a negative generalization with all Black cops. I just can't do that. You know, and I can't. You know, so I don't do that. I don't make negative generalization about them because I don't know the situation, their finances, or what happened, what brings them there. There are those who do become traitors. I understand that, but I do believe that there are those there who are conscious. I was a conscious black man in the military. I was a conscious black man while learning psychological warfare, even though I was surrounded by blacks who were totally brainwashed, who didn't understand what was happening. So I don't attack them. Now it says there are so many qualified African teachers, doctors, etc., but we continue to complain instead of creating our own medical facilities, schools, creating our own jobs. There are Africans creating jobs. There are people creating their own facilities. Those topics are not given a they're not given attention. They're not given a national platform. Also, and why is that necessary? To keep us believing that we're believing the less of ourselves, they also keep affirming facts from us. And a part of those affirming facts, there are some amazing things that we're still doing that you're never hearing about. Like right now, in medical schools right now, we have more African-American doctors going to medical school than in the history of America. That's, medical school and lawyers, now I'm not saying automatically they're conscious, but I'm pointing out that how there are positive narratives that are happening around us that a part of keeping us demoralized is by keeping positive narratives from us as well, and only showing us the fraudulent worst about ourselves. They're not going to show the conscious people in their media. That's why they say that the Black Revolution will not be televised. They're always going to. They don't want the ideology of the awakened to spread, so they keep us from a national platform. And they only show us the ignorance. And when we see those images, it demoralizes those of us who are conscious. But the media image of Black people is never our reality. Never our reality. It's always a distortion that benefits white supremacy. So when we start saying Black people this or Black people that, we don't care about ourselves, or we must remember that what shapes our opinions, what shapes how we see the world, is controlled by the white man. Our opinions are shaped by the narratives we hear, the media images we see, and those are controlled by the white man. So whenever I'm receiving the white man's information, I don't allow the information to demoralize me. I don't allow the information to make me speak negatively of my people, because I know that benefits the white man when I look at the sources. So I don't engage in speaking negatively or attacking my people in that manner. It's a part of the games they play upon us. Yes, it's true. But as I say, and I know I never asked permission to swear on this show, and I apologize for this show, but the only way I can describe it is a mind fuck. When you start studying how the layers behind this thing. There's psychological warfare, the way they lie, the way, like I said, how they feed us misinformation, demoralizing information, but it's how they control us. As I said, they determine that keeping Black people's self-esteem low, keeping our collective self-esteem low, makes us more subservient towards them. Make us believe that we have the lowest IQ, make us subservient towards them. Make us believe that we're the dumbest, make us subservient. All of those things have an effect that benefits white supremacy. And they work harder on us because we're the greatest threat. Knowing whites, they will soon be legislating against these homeschool. Yeah. That's my concern also, against the homeschooling. I do believe that if someone who's listening, the brother just talked about knowing whites, they'll start legislating against the homeschooling of kids. And that's a genuine concern I have. And I do feel that as the number of Blacks who homeschool starts to grow and the dominant society starts feeling threatened by it, they will start legislating it. Just as if we start all creating our own Black schools, they'll create laws against it to limit it. That's how they're going to do. That's why when we do our own school, they want to control our curriculum. True, they use the safest spells among their kinds. Yeah. The narratives that they feed into their society are designed to benefit their people and are designed to attack our people. Like, I'll give you two scenarios. People are easily controlled by the narrative they receive about themselves. If you constantly give if people constantly receive positive narratives about themselves, This elevates their self-esteem. This unifies them. This affects how they interact. Hello, hi. The positive narrative affect how they interact. Now, if you constantly feed people negative narratives about themselves, the opposite happens. This demoralizes them, divides them, makes them self-loathing and self-hating. You see, the first example is what's being done to white people. The white people's self-esteem is being built upon lies about black people. And then black people's self-esteem are being attacked by lies about ourselves, where we're being marginalized and whites are being exalted. And they're doing it for the benefit of their race. And that's the reality that we exist in. Those are the spells that they put upon us. And like I said, they thoroughly studied this. And even in America, where we are calling ourselves niggers, there's a spell behind the word nigger, because words have power over the subconscious mind. We become what we call ourselves. And that's why they program African Americans to call themselves niggers. In the 60s, when we call ourselves brothers and sisters, we were more unified. So they socialized us away from calling ourselves brothers and sisters. They socialized us away from calling ourselves Africans. And today, as a result of that, many of us rather be called a nigger than African. And they did this because they recognized that to make African Americans more loyal towards America, they had to erode our allegiance to Africa. And they eroded our allegiance to Africa by making Africa into a source of shame and humiliation for us. So when we kept seeing those humiliating images of Africa, we said, I don't damn African, I don't damn African. We're being programmed all the time. And if you notice, our mindset are always being shaped and molded in a way that benefits white supremacy. How can we not see this is by design? It's time we're addressing it and talking about it. True, the safest spells among their kind.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to understand. The brother here said the stand alone, Camp Grave, South Korea, DMZ. Oh, you got a brother in Korea. Man, you got brothers in Korea listening. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Okay. I see what I'm saying. That's why I'm glad I don't speak negatively of us in uniform, because we're listening. He's in the military and the brother listening. I used to work for a local authority who held regular psychometric workshop, which I found diverse and delusional. Okay, go on. Elaborate on that one. Psychometric workshops. I don't know. Are you in? Whites are being worshipped. What are we? Whites are being worshipped. What are we? And a person is showing an image of a cross, and he says, whites are being worshipped. What are we? Whites are being exalted in our society, and we're being denigrated. Yes, the person, we're the benchmark of failure and evil. That's how we are depicted in the media. We are depicted as the opposite. The whites are portrayed as being a group of the highest ethics, moral standing, and blacks are perceived as being a group of the worst. And this is, as I said earlier, this is only because they control the narrative. They use we are controlled. They all think we are their slaves. Hey, Sandra, I just read your comment. I'm trying to answer what you're saying. Well, I can't fully understand it, but yes, they use their monopoly over information. They use the monopoly over our image. They use the monopoly of information to control what we think, to shape our minds in ways that benefits themselves. And they vilify. Okay, this blaming of whites must stop. African leaders have the ability to. I've been waiting for this comment. I was waiting for this comment. When I talk about the mindset where we have been conditioned to think in ways that serves white supremacy, they're saying that every time we point towards whites, we're wrongly blaming whites. That is the height of the mindset that serves white supremacy. We have been conditioned not even to address white supremacy. Many of us are conditioned. Listen, why are you talking about whites? Aren't whites miseducating our children? Aren't whites exploiting Africa? Aren't whites keeping our nations divided? Aren't whites doing that? But you're saying, but we've been conditioned never to talk about them. Now, discussing them is not a case of taking our leaders off the hook who fail us. Right here in America, many of us are displeased with President Obama's failures to do for the Black community. For not doing more. And we discuss it. But at the same time, we know that when he was the president was a front man who works for those who truly right the country, and they are white men, ruling by the elites. And when a president is signed to protect the nation, he's signed to protect the nation's interests. And a part of the nation's interests is protect these white dominance. When you educate yourself, you would see that the problem still is white people. And not to address that problem doesn't fix the problem. And the analogy I use with this, we're always blaming white people, is this one. If I have children in my yard, 5 children in my backyard, and there's someone bringing a man coming to the fence, giving my children candy, and my kids have cavities, and I keep yelling at them about the cavities, sooner or later, I have to walk up to the fence and address the man who is putting the candy into my children's hand, who's feeding them over that fence. It's not negating my children's own responsibility by me addressing the man, but I must address the source. To be conditioned not to address the source makes me a damn fool. A damn fool, because the European is like a cancer within the African American culture, the African culture globally. His lies, his poison. So any Black man who tells me 2 things, that racism no longer exists, or stop blaming the white man, I call you a fool. Any Black man, I say you are a fool because you are ignorant. You are ignorant because you don't understand that racism still prevails more today than it did in the past. It's covert. They're working behind the scenes for their interests. So when a person says, oh, stop blaming the whites, you are ignorant. I don't argue with those who are ignorant, because racism still exists and it's more covertly deployed. And it gives the illusion that it's we who are our own worst enemies. And when you become and speak in that mindset, I have no time for it. I have no time to toy with the brainwashed ones, the ones who want to present at my knees the white man's analogy, who wants to present before me the lies that benefit the white man. The hell with such narratives. I have no time for it. I'm too awoke for that kind of a narrative. Too damn awoke. Okay, let me tell last. Yes, I want to say I don't know how much time we have.
We have just 3 minutes left. There's a fly flying around. I'm highly educated. So
I want to say that I love everyone who's listening. I love everyone who texts in, as well as those who are just listening. This is the dialogue we need to have, and this is the dialogue we need to share. The only way, and here's something else I learned in psychological warfare and propaganda school also, the only way to fight propaganda is with counter-propaganda. And counter-propaganda must be spread no differently than the false propaganda. I'm asking you to learn this information and share it. Share the information. Create memes to talk to you about it. Spread it. Spread the information. We must use the internet as if it was our own media outlet and turn it into an African drum of liberation to spread our truths. Spread the information, learn the information, and keep spreading it. We must push against the ignorant ideologies, because those ignorant ideologies, they plague our communities and they mentally enslave us. Push against those falsehoods. Our problem is that the ignorant ones are overconfident and the intelligent ones are filled with doubt. I'm trying to provide information for the intelligent ones who are tired of believing in the bullshit that insults their intelligence. Share the information. I have a page called www. The Black People's Matrix. Please share the information. That's the Black People's Matrix. www.theblackpeoplesmatrix.com. Excuse me. I also, on Facebook, I have lots of memes and articles. Please share them under Franklyn Jones, as well as under the Black Matrix Reloaded. what I'm doing is I put the information there, I put the memes there, and I'm asking you to share them, to saturate. We must saturate our society with the counter narratives of what's really being done to us. And we can do it. Just keep sharing the information. Don't get upset. Just keep sharing the proper information. Once our people start understanding the proper information, they will stop falling for those feeble-minded fairy tales. And they'll understand the science against our mind. And once our people understands it, our mind, once expanded to a larger space, never returns to its original size. So we are not being glitches in the matrix. We are Black liberating viruses within the matrix. Because our people, once they understand the truth, they don't return back to the ignorance. Because the truth won't allow them. That's why I'm asking you to find the truth, share it unrelentingly. That's the Black Matrix Reloaded, and my webpage is theblackpeoplematrix.com. Please share the information, share the videos. And if you notice, I'm not asking you for money. I'm not asking you to buy my book. I'm asking you to share the information. Share the information. Now, this is the sign of someone who's trying to get rich off of you. This is someone who ain't trying to lie in his pocket like a preacher. This is someone who recognizes the truth, and I'm sharing the truth out of love and conviction for my people. Please share the truth, learn the truth, liberate our minds. Peace.
Woo,
Thanks, my dear sister.
woo.
One love.
Absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. Thank you so much, Brother Franklyn Jones. You know, we really appreciate you taking the time to come and to share your deeply insightful knowledge with us about the psychological warfare and how, you know, our minds is being conditioned and how we are being conditioned as a people from such a young age on a daily basis right through to adulthood, and why it is, you know, that to a large extent we as a people have that feeling of powerlessness because we are never shown images of ourselves being powerful. We're never hearing about us being successful and as achievers and as accomplishers, you know, and we're never seeing ourselves in the light, you know, that's going to help us to respect ourselves and each other. And we, you know, by learning the science and how it's working against us, let's hope that we do go on now to study the tactics that is being used against us, learn how to flip the script, learn how to change the mindset of our children to undo, you know, the conditioning that's happening to them on a daily basis as a result of your works. So we thank you so much. I want to thank everyone in the chat that has stayed with us until these wee hours. If you're listening to us from KKK, it's actually after midnight right now. If you're on the west coast of Africa, it's after 11 o'clock at night. If it's EST time, I think it's probably about 5 or so in the evening. But, you know, we thank you, Brother Franklyn, so much. And we certainly look forward to having you back again at some point in the future to reinforce this really important message. Thank you. Thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you. One love, family. One love. Peace and love. Have a wonderful, strong, and we'll see you, Black, all being well, next Monday, where we will have Leader Bandaka with us, and we're going to be delving into some history, that we are going to be learning from. So Monday night, all being well, 8 p.m. GMT time. No, it's not 8 p.m. Sorry, it's 10 p.m. GMT time, 9 p.m. EST time with Leader Bandaka in conversation with myself, and then again Black on Wednesday. More love, more power, more voodoo to each and every one. One love, family. One love.